Um, Hi everybody. I'm Anushka, and I also go by opheliagame. So on GitHub, or Twitter, or Instagram, that's my handle. I'm going to talk about a tiny creative coding library that I wrote called join.js. 日本語ちょっと喋れるんですけど、日本語の方だったら、ユニトック JP で多分翻訳されると思いますので、よろしくお願いします。Okay. So Joy.js is a tiny creative coding library. For people who don't know what creative coding is, um, it's not what it literally means. All kinds of coding, when people are writing code to solve problems, I think that's creative. But in this time when we need creative coding, it usually means people making images or videos or sound, um, a lot of interactive stuff, a lot of stuff that lies at the intersection of technology and creative expression or art. The picture on the left is a work by John Simon Jr. It's called Every Icon. It's a work that cycles through, as the name says, every icon in a 32 by 32. So that's 32 by 32 pixels. That's when Apple icons first were made. That's the pixel grid that they were made in. And this work cycles through all of these pixels. So to cycle through all of the permutations and combinations in just the first row, I think it takes, I'm unable to see my notes right now, but I think it takes 5 million years to just cycle through the first row. Any guesses how long it takes for the second row? Not 10 million years, a lot more than 10 million years. And to cycle through all of these icons, it takes a couple of 100 trillion years, so we will be dead by the time this installation finishes. For somebody who has learned programming since school, I thought I knew all the math when he first told me about this, but it was still so surprising to hear. And when you see this visually and you connect the dots, I think that expression of this being an installation and people understanding the math through that is really powerful. The second image I have is of a column animation. Column is this daily art practice, uh, mostly done by women. So you take rice powder and you make patterns. It's usually outside the house, like on the floor. And a lot of times you wouldn't think of these women, a lot of times they're housewives, you wouldn't think of them as being super good at math. But if you look at, and if you search about colon later, colon is also used to understand protein structures. And so these women are doing this daily art practice, which seems very different from the kind of math, the linear algebra that creative coding is associated with. But they're doing this math, they're doing all of this um, computation and calculation, but in a very different format. Uh, Meg Polar is the name of the person who made the animation, and it was made in a software called Notebox, which is a node-based visual programming software. I have been doing sketching. I have a I had a really art sketching practice during COVID. That's when it started. And so I was losing track of time. My days were just going by, and I had no idea what I was doing with them. Um, and I think of myself as somebody who draws, but not too well. So with code, there was a chance of making something a bit different. Because I really also like code, but I have no but having no educational background in design, a lot of the sketches that I was making were ugly. But I decided to do them daily and share them with people because it was more about the practice and it was more about the kind of ideas that I was forming and the kind of feedback that gave me rather than how the sketches were looking. Um, the image, so this is just kind of what sketching has come to mean to me, and how people that are not engineers, people that are very far away from computers, use programming to express themselves. The image on the left is of a gathering with friends. It's called Coding with Friends, and Computation Mama is a very close friend of mine. She's a designer, educator, artist, creative technologist, and she does a lot of things, but one of those things was to gather her friends, and then we would just sit together and make something that we wanted. And it was a way of catching up. It was a way of spending time with each other while also doing this thing that we really liked, which was coding and making images or sound with code. Um, the one on the right is by Karen, who's also a really good friend of mine. She is a painter and an illustrator. She's written children's books. So she's very far away from somebody that you would think of when you think of somebody who's writing code. Um, and she started learning coding during COVID, I think when she was in her 60s. Um, and she is the one who made this. This is a game that you can play on itch.io. It's a game that helps you think about how cauliflower turns to broccoli, because that's how the genetic mutations happened actually. And this funny thing is, because she's based in India, there's a lot of there's an inside joke about bulldozers and how bulldozers just destroy everything. So that's a little joke she put in there. Um, there's a lot of other artists. A lot of them are in Japan. There's a processing community foundation, and lot of people who maybe did not have an engineering background but started learning how to code with tools like simple tools like p5.js, and now have a daily practice. So I'm just going to skip through this. I think maybe I'm running low on time. But CC Sunday is also a creative coding community that Mathura and Karthik started in India, and it's also just a bunch of people coming together to discuss what we work on, what people have been exploring, and just learning from each other. Um, this is some of the things that I've made. I really like text, um, and I find this kind of meditative and relaxing for me. So after a day of work, if I've had an idea and I can make a sketch out of it, just feels really rewarding. Um, it feels good. The one sketch I want to talk about here is the one on the right. This is a sketch I made at YCAM in Yamaguchi, where recently they had a workshop for 3 days um, focused at beginners, people who've never ever written a single line of code. And all of these people came together to work with P5.js and a lot of other tools, and also use ChatGPT. So there was like you kind of gave them the basic tools of how to make a circle, a rectangle, a line, and then just let them do their thing. And with ChatGPT, these people made truly wonderful images in just a span of 3 days. It was really inspiring to see. Uh, if you've been on Twitter and you're somebody who knows this field of creative programming, this is a hashtag that's really popular in Japan, where people try to make P5 or processing sketches that fit in a Twitter. So this whole thing, if you copy and paste it, it will give you the animation that you see. Um, it's really fascinating, and people make really complicated stuff with very little code. But it's a little hard to understand, for sure. I don't have to spend all of it. How I started making joy. Um, So I've never thought of myself as an author of a library. I don't think I could ever have if it wasn't for Anand. And there was a hackathon, and he had been working on the original API, which was the original library written in Python and runs with the SVG renderer. So it's not very web friendly, but the API and the ideas, the core ideas were made by him. And he suggested that I port it to P5.js, which would help um, using textures, images, doing a lot more other fun stuff. Stuff like live coding. If it were to be web centric, that would be really simple to do. So he suggested that I port Joy to P5.js, and that's how it began. And because I had like strong shoulders to stand on. It seemed like a tractable problem, and it wasn't a problem that I kept for 5 years in the future. When I'm that smart, I will solve it. But it was something that I could challenge myself to. It was a little challenging, but it didn't seem out of my reach. So in 3 days or 2 days, I wrote the initial JavaScript library. Um, while also doing a lot of mistakes. It was, yeah, finishing this was really helped me think of myself in a different way. And so this year, I came back to what I had started. This was 2022, I think. And I wanted to clean things up. I wanted to finish the things that I had left unfinished. And I coded things to TypeScript, and I wrote this program on the right, which is usually not. This is the absolutely wrong way to write a Joy.js program because you don't need sign, as Anand says. If you're writing a program in Joy.js, sign and the cos and the tan, the trig, the math is what we're trying to avoid. We want to make it simple. So but I wrote it in TypeScript, but all of those ideas were still not with me. So this is a little funny thing that I saw this, and then I went back when I was making the talk, and I found this thing that Anand said, and I was like, oh, I did something wrong. And so when you think about languages, I don't think it's just a way of communication or writing. It's an entire way of thinking. When you're speaking in English, if I speak in Japanese, I have a very different personality. English is very different. Um, if I'm writing in P5.js, the way that I think is different than the way that I think when I write or try to write something in Joy. And so language is not just about communicating. I think it's more about thinking. It's more about forming the ideas and having the tools, the basic tools that you have to solve a problem. Um, yes, JavaScript programmers. Okay. JavaScript makes something simple. But other programming languages are not very happy with it. And so, in the same way, P5.js makes something simple. And a lot of times when I talk to people about what I do, or I tell them about my sketching, people who've never written a line of code ask me, do I need to be good at math to do this? And I do tell them that no, because I'm not good at math, definitely, even though it might look like it. You do have to have a willingness to think about the concepts and a willingness to fail for all your trigonometric functions to fly out the window and everything goes wrong. But you don't necessarily need to be good at math. What you need to do is, for anybody who studied P5 or anything else, the first person you see is Dan Schiffman. He's the god of creative coding. It's how I started, it's how almost everybody does. And he makes it look so simple. I think the best thing about watching Dan's videos is how close he feels, even though he has been doing this for years and years and years, he still doesn't make you feel stupid um, for messing up, because he messes up all the time, and just the way he does it, it's okay to mess up, it's okay to make mistakes. Um, but a lot of people do find when they're starting some things are not so easy, or some things take a bit of time to get around. But but maybe that is because P5JS is a very broad set of tools. It is not opinionated. It allows you to do whatever you want to do with it, and so it doesn't impose um, a lot of opinions in terms of how you should handle things. Um, there's um, they don't really want to add extra magical syntax. So they want you to have simple for loops so that when you go outside of P5JS, you can deal with all of this stuff. But a lot of times, there's a lot of code. Like for example, the code on the right is similar to something you would write in P5. You do push, you do all your transformations, translate, rotate, scale, then you make your shape, and then you do pop. And if you repeat this a number of times in a certain way, you get a certain pattern. But all of this takes a lot of typing. So, for example, if you're live coding, if you're doing this as a performance, P5JS is not the best way to think about things when you're doing everything live and you're writing all the code live. On the left is probably the most important function in Joy, which is repeat. Um, it does the same thing as the right one. It's just a different way of thinking. So you have transforms and you have the number of times you want to apply that transform. And based on how the transform function looks, this can give different results, which I will show in a second in a live coding format. So even in P5JS, but also in Joy, you make a shape, apply transformations, and you repeat. That's how you get a pattern. That's how you also move things around. That's how you make static images. It's kind of the basic tools. So maybe this is the time for. This is going to be difficult. Okay, thank you. I'll finish it quickly. So, sorry, I wrote this morning. It's not very. Okay. Okay. So to make a simple shape, you do something like joy.shape, which is a circle or a rectangle or a line or point. And then you can add those things together to compose shapes together. If I'm going to do somewhere, I think. And so here's a donut. There's a circle inside a circle. To translate, you do the same thing, but so this entire thing is a shape, and so the way things work is you call a shape, you call some transforms on it, and you call some more transforms on it, and you can add some more shapes on it. So basically, everything you get after this line and more complicated lines is a shape that you can use with a renderer. So I'm using the P5JS renderer, but the way that I've structured the library is that you can have an SVG renderer, a 3JS renderer, basically any way to interpret the shapes and the transforms, and you get something out of it. Okay. Okay. Commenting out. Okay, this is a rectangle, and we rotate it and scale it. I think that was hard. Okay, let's move on to other examples. Okay, so you have a line. I want to repeat it 18 times, and every single time I just rotate. So I make a line with a center point and repeat it 18 times around the center point. That's my shape. Okay, so now I have a circle. I want to repeat it these many times, but every single time I want to apply one rotation and one scale. And that gives you this. I think this, when I made this for the first time, as you've seen before, this was really surprising because it's a very small code. And the more you add on to it, the more the shape is going to transform. Okay, I will. Okay, yes. Uh, okay, let me just show the good stuff. So here's another shape. I'm just going to cycle through these. This is the pilot axis animation. So only this is the part that's making this. And then the angle is changing and the time, based on that, the rotations change. Okay. This is some more rotations. And if I add all this to it, okay. So what's next? What I want to do next, I think this can really shine in a live coding environment if you want to add on things to each other and comment them out and kind of just play with it by writing everything real time. I want to add more renderers and stronger transforms, and that's what's next for the library. Thank you for listening. This is the GitHub link for the project, and that's where you can find the slides. Thank you so much.